Diabolik Lovers, More Blood. Yes, this thing did indeed get a sequel, and yes, like its predecessor, Diabolik Lovers More Blood was a 12-episode series from Studio Zexes and aired back in the halcyon days of 2015 alongside other seasonal classics like Aria, The Scarlet Ammo, Double A, and the unforgettable 111 coin, a charming romp about a 500 yen coin that looks exactly like a dog. Esteemed company, no doubt. Anyway, we ended things in season 1 with the series protagonist Yui, Pancake, Food, Bitch-chan, Sao, Pig, Maso Neko-chan, Livestock, Eve, Komori, living happily ever after with her brood of sexually aggressive Bishi vampires. The first season was a muddled car crash, and that fact is glaringly reflected in its rather flaccid MAL score of 5.48. Things I am glad to announce, however, picked up during the second season as we see Diabolik Lovers More Blood raising its game somewhat, with a far girthier rating of 5.88. Encouraging signs, no doubt. And obviously I was expecting quality from start to finish this time around. Quote, "I'm gonna make you forget all about that mark Subaru-kun left in your mouth. I'm gonna drink you so deep." Now, before we get into the series itself, there are clearly two distinct and valid directions we could go with for Diabolik Lovers More Blood. And I'm sure series creators struggled intensely on which direction to bring this story along from, narratively speaking. Option 1, we could flesh out the characters from the first season. There were 6 brothers after all, and some of them were about as well-rounded and as lifelike as a plastic carrier bag being dragged softly in the wind. Maybe we could spend more time with them, maybe unpack them a little bit. It might help us better understand the vamps. For example, it could help us empathize with and understand why baby of the bunch Subaru walks around all day scowling and growling like a distressed puppy with its testes trapped in a rusty coat hanger.
Gee.
A solid option perhaps, but there is another way we could go. We could instead raise 2 skinny little fists up towards the sky like some emaciated orphan from a Charles Dickens novel, dizzy on mischief and gruel, while shyly declaring to the heavens, "Character development be damned. We want more, please. More blood-sucking, more implied rape, and most of all, more vampires." I'm sure the writers wrestled many long hours and lonely nights on which direction to bring the script in before finally settling on the right choice. Really, the only choice. Which was, of course, the more route. And that decision bore ripe fruit, known as Diabolik Lovers More Blood. Here is a synopsis provided to us by those scurrilous wretches and shade of the Twilight Hour, the MAL rewrite team. Yui Komori, still held captive by the Sakamaki brothers, pure-blood vampires after her blood, experiences yet more bizarre twists to her life, following her stay at their household. Though haunted by enigmatic dreams, Yui soon deciphers their meaning when caught in a car crash, which subsequently leads to meeting 4 new vampires, the Mukami brothers, Ruki, Azusa, Ko, and Yuma, who themselves capture the bewildered girl. Yui later awakens in the Mukami mansion, where the brothers reveal their plans for her. She is their Eve, and her blood will find the Adam among them. Together, they will have the power to rule the world. However, with the Sakamaki brothers hot on their heels, things might not go as smoothly as they had imagined. So, before we get into things proper, and in the interest of total fairness, I need to bring this up. The soundtrack to both season 1 and the second season are both composed by Yuki Hayashi. Hayashi is an exceptional composer and has done many of my all-time favorite scores, including both Haikyuu and Run with the Wind. And he killed it in this series also. Season 1 is the stronger of the two, in my opinion, but season 2 brought it and is top drawer in its own right. So Hayashi deserves credit on that front. Everything else, though, maybe not so much. So let's get into this thing. The series opens on a dark and dimly lit night with an establishing shot resting on a pale blue moon as we hear the faint howl of an approaching wolf in the distance. We then cut to reveal a pair of wolves bathed in a halo of crimson red, who then transform into a pair of rather stylish humans. Could it be sartorial werewolves? Yes, I believe it is. One of the werewolves is even sporting the rather bold and unique combo of a pair of glasses, which run under an eye patch. Not quite sure how that works, but whatever, it looks cool, and ultimately that's all that matters, right? Just go with it. So then, Super Eye Patch Wolf, smirking, turns to his companion and says, "The time is now, brother. We shall have our revenge." At this point, the moon turns an ominous shade of red, and I'm fucking pumped. Vampires and werewolves? I hadn't been this hyped since Twilight Breaking Dawn Part 2 was in theaters. Hashtag always Team Jasper.
Jacob.
No.
That's the Jacob.
Hashtag always Team Jasper. Twilight stands will know what I mean. After that, we get the OP, a rather fun coffin rock style bop titled Kidan no 666. When the music eventually fades, we are subjected to this odd dream sequence where someone is calling out to Yui, but refers to her as Eve. Eve. That's odd. Why call her Eve? Her name's Yui. I have no idea, but I'm sure that they will explain that later on. Probably. Anyways, after that little distraction, we are then treated to what we've all been waiting for. Yui, in bed, getting trained by a bunch of vampires. Toot toot! In this scene, we have Laito, Ayato, and Kanato all going to town on our heroine, while Yui puts up the incredible resistance of softly saying their names one after another in a slightly questioning tone. Ayato-kun? Laito-kun? Kanato-kun? I really don't know how they got past your defenses there, Yui. They must be ninjas or something. Meanwhile, as all of this is going on, elder brother and resident prude, Reiji, is off sitting on the sofa watching the whole thing occur while gently stroking himself. Or his glasses. I don't really know which it was. It wasn't that clear to me. After the drinking scene is done, the eternal wordsmith that is Laito drops one of his classic bars. Just thinking of our little bitch, squirming while we all take a turn. It sends shivers down my spine. Laito gonna Laito, what can I say? Later we cut to the brothers and Yuki driving to school as Ayato gets all gropey once again. However, this time he is interrupted from his meal as the coffin limo they're all riding in begins to fly uncontrollably through the air before exploding in a ball of flames upon colliding with a tree. Sadly, for the sake of drama and for karma, nobody is hurt. But overlooking the wreckage on a nearby hill are 4 sexy new vampires. They seem to be the ones responsible for the attack, and it seems a vampire war is about to begin. Well, hot damn. A vampire war and werewolves. This season is going to be hype. Those 4 vampires on the hill are the aforementioned brothers in the Mal synopsis, the Mukami brothers, Ruki, Azusa, Kyo, and Yuma. By the end of the first episode, the brothers manage to steal Yui away to their vampire manor, and just like the Sakamaki brothers, these boys come equipped with their own set of charming foibles and sexual peccadillos. For example, there is the beret sporting, possible stroke victim Azusa. He plays the masochist to Kanato Sakamaki's sadist, and because of Yui's rather ambiguous feelings about the treatment she receives throughout the series, Azusa early on identifies them as kindred spirits of sorts by claiming they both smell the same, which sounds very odd, I know, but I took it to mean that he believes that Yui too was in fact a Maso Neko-chan. After that action-packed first episode, things settle into the usual dross up to episode 6. It's the same pantomime of season 1, you know, getting to know the new vampires individually before Yui gets assaulted out of nowhere in a weird ceremony of implied rape. This pretty much mirrors the first season to a T, but with one key difference. In the first season, I went into the series unprepared. And I'm not gonna lie, the cocktail of terrible storytelling, metaphorical sexual violence, and the overall aggression of the vampires towards Yui created this moral dissonance between myself as viewer and the show itself. But it also at the same time held me in this weird state of fascination as it compelled me to continue watching. It's akin to that reaction of people slowing down to view a car crash. Season 1 was my car crash. I don't know if it was a general desensitization over time or if the series got tamer by comparison to its predecessor, but in season 2 the revulsion was certainly not as strong this time around. There was still dissonance though, it was just not the moral sort. In season 2 what kept on pulling me out of the story was how bad I thought some of the characters looked. If you'll indulge me for a moment as I dust off an old catchphrase, but if I want a show full of Bishi boys, then they gotta look good. And from a design perspective, the Sakamaki brothers look good. Some look better than others, of course, shoo, but one and all, they do look good. These new guys, with the exception of the masochist Azusa, didn't look good. I don't vibe with any of the character designs, including Azusa. He wasn't my speed at all. Ruki, this season's Ayato, which is to say that he is the main vampire in terms of screen time and plot, is handsome, sure, but super generic looking. He's like a color-drained version of my boy Shu, and that's just disappointing. And then there are the 2 main offenders, Ko and Yuma Mukami. These 2 make up 50% of the new vampires, and I hated their character design. And it took me a while to put my finger on why exactly I hated them so much, but I did eventually figure it out. Have you ever seen a young child working on a jigsaw puzzle and they just get it into their heads that 2 random pieces that clearly don't fit together belong together, and then they just jam the 2 pieces together into each other before moving on? And then when they're finally done playing, you look at that weirdly misshapen mass of puzzle pieces they have left in their wake. Like, yeah, sure, it's together and it's not falling apart, but it just looks really wrong in its misshapen incorrectness. Kyo and Yuma Mukami are those jigsaw puzzles, and the pieces that were being jammed together are their hair and their heads. Their hair looks dreadful, like it's actively bad. It's like some weird spiky crustacean just crawled out of the sea and unceremoniously plopped down to sleep on the vampires' heads. Sure, the hair is there, like it's a corporeal entity which exists and occupies the space atop their heads, but it doesn't look like it belongs there, and I literally could not get over over this throughout the entirety of the series. Every time I looked at them, I just had this weird sense of revulsion that I could never get past. But character design aside, let's get back to the show. And as I said, up to episode 6, it was the same old serving, the same reheated stool that played out before us in season 1. Just now it featured new character skins. The visual language was so formulaic, in fact, that it can be boiled down to this episode archetype I put together. So enjoy. It starts at the manor with a lackluster establishing shot of the key location of the episode. Yui, the protagonist, begins her narrative migration towards the orbit of the vampire who will be featured in this episode. Finding him, she comes to a halt and inquires on what the vampire is doing, how he is feeling, or what's wrong. Vampire responds aggressively, threatening violence, calls her stupid, or food. Note that each vampire comes equipped with a unique and demeaning pet name for her, like Bitch-chan, that he alone can summon when referring to her. Aggression wanes momentarily, as he then goes on to reveal something about himself, which is humanizing to some degree. A poorly animated flashback begins, which explains the character's history as the vampire drones on over it. It appears to be mildly tragic. It attempts to validate the aggression of the character to some degree. Yui feels empathy, and then, without any build-up or warning, a bite scene commences, which substitutes for a symbolic rape scene. After several seconds of biting, a tracking shot then occurs as the camera gaze moves away from the bite to some random piece of visual distraction, usually a shot of some still life, which metaphorically represents the vampire in question. A tomato, a flower, a knife. These episodes are bad, and the style of these opening episodes becomes so overly familiar and played out that eventually you just set phasers to don't care, as your brain starts to filter out the narrative's feeble attempts to make you give a damn about the vampires in question. After episode 5 though, we move into our second act, and this chunk of the series pivots in a rather surprising direction. Don't worry though, it is still as vacuous as its predecessors, but now we are subjected to a 3-episode arc of weird cuckolding. You see, in episode 6, Yui finally returns to school, and is now face to face with her previous harem, the Sakamaki brothers. What ensues is a variety of odd interactions where various members of the Sakamaki clan get cucked by their counterparts, the Mukami clan, which, to clarify, is having one of the Mukami brothers chomping on Yui aggressively while staring deeply into the eyes of the onlooking and seemingly powerless Sakamaki brother. Really odd stuff. But I guess a pleasant surprise, as this certainly wasn't retracing old ground like the first arc was. This is also the time in the series though where I just had to give up on Yui as a lost cause. Previously I had a lot of sympathy with her, especially in season 1, but by this point her indecisiveness and lack of agency had become actually maddening. For example, there was a point in episode 6 where, when confronted by Subaru, the youngest Sakamaki brother, about where her heart lay, she just froze and proceeded to make random confused noises until eventually being interrupted by Ko. Huh? Huh? It was infuriating. Her complete lack of agency throughout the series had me actually baffled as to whether I was actually trapped in some alternate reality where I was not in fact watching the anime at all, but rather playing the visual novel. Was Yui just stuck on hold, waiting for me to enter in a command in order for her to actually do something? Anyway, the series eventually meanders into the endgame. Remember the promise of a vampire war and the werewolves of the opening episode? Well, here is where we will get the payoff. And here is where more blood would finally set itself apart from the nonsensical mixed abortion that was the finale of season 1. Now, reflecting on season 1, it's fair to say that season 1 was bad. I thought that literally nothing could be worse than the ending we got. And after having watched season 2, now I can confirm that literally nothing is worse than the narrative conflict of season 1. Let me reiterate that statement. Nothing is worse than season 1. But I'm sure you can sense by my tone where this is going. So the question is this: how? How in the actual season 2 end up being worse than season 1? Well, I'll tell you. Season 2 gives us nothing. Nothing. There was literally nothing. The whole Adam and Eve thing petered out like a wet fart before it could even get going, while of course never explaining what would have actually happened if the Mukami brothers did in fact become Adam. On top of that, the series of course never even attempted to explain what about Yui was so gosh damn special that she alone in all of creation was Eve. As for the werewolves, that's even worse. So in the series, the werewolves are referred to as the Founders. Curious name, right? The Founders. And what is this revenge that they were after? What is their endgame? Well, the endgame gets answered at least. Turns out they're after Yui's blood. Shocking. As for why they're called Founders? No, we never find out. We got painfully close though. In episode 11, Reiji explains to Yui and his brothers that the Founders are after them. Confused, Subaru, in a questioning tone, asks, "Founders?" Reiji responds, "Yes, 2 of them." No, Reiji, the question was not how many of them there are. It was who they are. The camera then cuts to Yui, our final hope. Surely she is as confused as we all are. She'll ask about the founders, right? And who they are? No. We never find out who the hell the founders are. And you know what else we don't get? Any werewolf action at all. The big werewolf revenge plot never materializes. The series just ends before the wolves even arrive at the mansion to steal Yui away. Unbelievable. We do, however, get some breadcrumbs. As in the final moments of the series, we do get the series highlights, and this literally made me laugh out loud. In the final moments of the series, Ayato Sakamaki and Ruki Mukami have a showdown for the faith of Yui. They both resolve to team up for the upcoming battle against the founders, and even promise to keep Yumi as theirs forever, letting nobody else have her ever again. They then proceed to tag team her and drink her blood. The end. Diabolik Lovers More Blood gets an F for fail. It rather incredibly somehow was worse than the first season.